Hi students, this video is a little bit more about events. We talked about them a lot already, seen a lot of examples. I just want to add a little bit more detail. So, and it's about how, if you remember the video on going over all the object-oriented stuff, we talked about all the members, and events are also kind of a member when in an object-oriented event-driven, OOED, like C# or Visual Basic. The objects also have signals they send out that event handlers are listening for to react to. So you can kind of think about events being members of the different controls. So I want to talk a little bit more detail. You've seen already how to do some event wiring, as it's often called, for some different events. So for instance, the button's the easiest, the most intuitive, I think, when you first start. If you double click on the button, it takes you to an event handler, generates an event handler if it doesn't exist already. And then it takes you to it if you've already got some code there, and then you can add some code. And what you're basically saying is that when this event happens, in this case the underscore click for this particular control, btn greet, which is a button, when that happens I'm going to do some stuff. These, by the way, I'm pretty sure we're not covering these yet, so I'll talk about it later, but the object, the sender in this case, is this button. So you can get at the members of that button if you need to. Like maybe you want to change the color of the button when it's pressed, for instance. You would have to do something by getting to the object reference. But notice this, it is lowercase, by the way. Objects object is just an generic object. You'll have to downcast it. We'll go over that later. Event args are also, these are sent along with, there's different kinds of arguments that come along with the event that's generated that you can handle sometimes, but we'll experiment with more of that in the future. For now, you just want to do some code. And so in this case, I say I've added some code, so I'm going to explain what's going on here. And I also want kind of the emphasis of this. There'll be some details you don't necessarily have to know, like in all my videos apparently, but they're kind of good to see, I think. But the main thing you want to focus on are the default events that controls work with, I guess, generate. Think of the default events as like the most common thing that will happen with the thing. So for buttons, the most common thing that happens is a click. So when you double click on the button, it takes you to a click event handler because that's the most common event that happens. But for other objects, it's not always clicks. So the most common event that happens to a text box is that people type in it. So I'm going to double click on it here so you can see. It takes you, and I've already added some stuff here, but it takes you to an event handler called text changed, not click. So people get confused sometimes and they think it takes you to a click event when you double click on anything. That's not what happens. It takes you to the default. It just happens that buttons are the most intuitive. They're the one you usually start first, and you click on it and it takes you to a click event. You think click on click event. Don't do that because it just takes you to the default event. There's a way to see that here somewhere, and of course I'm going to look for it and it's going to be hard to find, but you can see some of the other events. You can definitely see them if you go to the properties window, but we'll check that later. So what this is doing, I've added some, and by the way, this is when I had it named before and it didn't, I didn't change the name, so sometimes it's good to see the mistakes that I make so you know how to avoid them. I had not renamed my button like I'll tell you guys, preach to you guys to do. Always rename your stuff right away as soon as possible so you don't have it hanging around with the wrong name. Anyway, so you see how to fix it right, though. You have to go and delete that event handler that's been added. Okay, so I have this cryptic thing here where I have the value of true being assigned to name change. And if you hover over it, you see how you get, I don't know if it's IntelliSense or some other name for it, but you get little helpers, right? So for this particular name change variable, you can see that the data type is bool. That's short for Boolean. You guys should know what Booleans are, probably true or false. That's similar across the languages. I think it's spelled out as Boolean in Java, but same thing. Okay. So what I've done, and I wanted to show you, this is more about the object-oriented class thing too. This is FRM demo class, right? It inherits the form class. So you can kind of think of it as a specialization of a form. It's a form, but it's the particular form that has your controls on it, your design for it. And in this case, we're also adding an instance variable to it that the form class doesn't have, but an FRM demo class does. I'm creating a private instance variable. Notice this is just in the first thing in the class. It's outside of all the methods and constructors and everything, right? As a matter of fact, I like to do this when I'm describing these things, and I think you guys should get used to it too. These are the parts that you have of an FRM demo. I added this at the top. This is a variable that is only known to this class. It's private, and it's called name changed, and I called it, and it's a Boolean. If you notice in the constructor here for the FRM demo, underneath initialize component, which is a thing, if you look at the partial class, it has to do with like generating the visual form, right? That's done first, but then I can do some constructor stuff. What I'm saying is that whenever a new FRM demo is created, loaded into memory, instantiated, becomes an instance of the FRM demo class, it will create this variable first, and then it will assign. The first thing it'll do in the constructor is, after that initialize component thing, is it'll assign the value of false to it. And what I'm saying is that the name that the person's typing in the text box hasn't been changed by default. So why do I do that? Because if you go back to the FRM, I always click on the wrong one here. If you go back to this and double click on it, you see it takes you to the text changed event. When does that fire? It fires anytime somebody changes the contents of that text property, which symbolizes what's inside visually the text box. So whenever it's changed, it does this. It's called, I like this word. If you've had me before, you know what I've talked about this word. In this particular method, it makes an idempotent change from false to true if it's already false. Otherwise, it's true to true, which is why it's idempotent. So when idempotent means when you do repeated actions to the thing, it only changes the first time and then it doesn't change after that, as opposed to a toggle, like a button you press that turns something on or off. You press it once, it turns on. Press it again, it turns off. This is sort of the complement of that. Anyway, what will happen when somebody types in that text box is that it will fire off a text changed event signal, and this particular method, this event handler, will capture that. It's wired up to this. It will capture and react to it. What will it do? It will change this to true regardless of what it already is, this variable. How do we use that? So when you do the button btn click event, it'll set the text name, the username, to the text, and then I have this little simple decision statement. I check to see if the name has been changed. This is equivalent, by the way. People get confused by this for a while, but you want to get out of the habit of doing this. You could also say if name changed is equal to true. This is redundant though, because name changed is either true or false per se of its own self, so you don't need to compare it to the value true. So this right here is equivalent to this condition for this if statement. So I'm saying if the name changed, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the label for the greeting to hello space, comma space, and I'm going to concatenate the username that I get from the text box right here. Otherwise, that means, and then I'm going to set it to false, because at that point you got to reset it. They've changed it to something else maybe, and now until they change it again, it hasn't been changed, right? Otherwise, I say, oh, you haven't changed your name since the last time you clicked that button, so I'm just going to say, oh, hi again, right? Does everybody follow that? So let me run it and show you how it works. The important part is not like how this particular example works. It's to understand that there's a text changed event for this text box, so that when I type into it, say Chris, what happened is it fired off the text changed. It turned name changed to true, and name change means, hey, you're a new person, I'm gonna be nice to you. Hello, Chris. But if I click this button again, the text changed event hasn't happened since the button click event changed it back to false, because I didn't type in here. So it stayed at false, which means, oh, I'm doing the else. Oh, hi again. This is boring, right? But if I do some more text changed, right, it's nice to me again, but not if I do this. So this is just a simple, again, the point is that you understand that there is a text changed event, and there's so many other events that can be attached to so many of your controls, but the default one for the text box is text changed, not click. I do also have a click event. I didn't finish it, so I was trying to decide whether I wanted to save it for the video or not. It looks like I did save it for the video. Just again to review the button real quick, and maybe as a point of comparison with something you already know. BTN click event, what I want to do, I want to exit the program. The way you do that, there's different ways you can do it actually, but the simplest way is to call the close event of this particular form. So whenever you're in an object's code, we're in the class definition right now of an FRM demo. Even though there's other controls and stuff in it that are part of that form, the main thing that we're in is that form's definition. So whenever you say this, you're talking about the currently referenced object of type FRM demo in memory. I want to close it. In other words, it's that one that start when you click start the program. It's that particular form that's in memory, and I want to close that form. And when you close it, it goes out of memory. You don't see it anymore. So that's what this dot close means. If you actually hover over it, it'll tell you. Name can be simplified, maybe. You can actually just type close, actually, they're right. But I wanted to show you that it's a member of the form. So you can see it's demo namespace dot FRM demo is what we're inside of that class. This is what this is a reference to. So when I run this, I'm clicking start here. You can also do Control F5. Hello, FOSS, and then again, you're boring, and then quit. That was 12 minutes. I'm going to stop right there, and I'll see you in the next one.